Now, coming to the topic I've chosen today, a very boring topic. At least I thought so until I had a personal experience last year when my dad actually had a glaucoma attack and he couldn't see for about 3 or 4 hours, and that was really scary. And made me think about accessibility, and in a much more empathetic way. Like until then, accessibility was only something I considered was, you know, it was more on the lines of compliance, right? That's how we all kind of approach it. Yeah, accessibility 1.2, nothing's been done since 2017. It's just been there, right? So I tried, browsing the web for a day with the screen reader on. We all would, wanted to sound more like Palki Sharma, but obviously it doesn't sound very human-like, right? So that's just super annoying. I couldn't use it beyond like half an hour or so. Listening to that robotic noise. So we need to do something. I mean, we have Siri, we have all that good stuff. I think we should bring AI and LP to screen readers at some point too, right? And the agenda for today is approaching accessibility, compliance versus empathy, right? We usually approach it through compliance. Governments have rules saying that if you are a company of this size, if you cater to so-and-so audience, you need to have accessibility as a feature versus being empathetic about it, right? Now you can have all the rules and protocols and everything you need to build it, but you can't force somebody kind of do something unless you have empathy for doing so, right? And we also speak a little bit about how to approach it, and also code like you give a damn, right? Because if you don't really care about it, you wouldn't take effort. Like, let's look at all the talks we had today. We're trying to make the web fast. We're trying to make it like an F1 racer car. All that is good stuff, but accessibility has been pushed on the back seat. I think it's time we kind of take it seriously, at least collectively. How many of you are all front-end engineers? Can I see some hands? All of you, of course. What a question is that? But what I'm trying to say is collectively, we all have the power to, change the web, the way visually impaired people access, your applications, right? Creating more jobs. Have you ever thought that your work, adding more, more features of accessibility, really caring about it, can actually create more jobs? How many of you have used Jira over here? Again, a rhetorical question. Jira is a good software. Not really, it's a horrible software, I can't lie. Okay. Again, zero accessibility. Try navigating Jira, right, with a screen reader. You will close the tab first before you close accessibility screen reader. It's that horrible. It is. So if Jira was accessibility, not with the guidelines, but if it was anywhere close to usable, we would have had more jobs for visually impaired in your companies. Have you thought about that? Visually impaired people could have taken up Scrum Master jobs. They could have taken product manager jobs. They could have even taken, for all you know, release manager jobs, for all you know. So that's what I'm trying to say, that what you do would really make a difference, right? And collectively, we have the power to kind of take this topic that's been put on the back seat as a compliance and rather think from an empathetic point of view, right? So that's the why bit of what I'm trying to say here. And yeah, and the tech stack. So I just don't want to give you like Gyan, but also give you some tech stacks I think are really cool. I know adding ARIA and all that, sorry, ARIA. I don't know why I keep saying ARIA, but ARIA to ARIA labels, ARIA, properties and all that metadata is not really, you wouldn't want to kind of code it by hand all the time. So I'm going to talk about a couple of libraries which will help you do that. And yeah, so that's the general notion I have, and why I'm doing this and how to approach this, right? Compliance versus empathy. there's something called as inclusive design, right? And this is a very interesting read for me. And it talks about, first it talks about different kinds of disability. Uh, Permanent disabilities, if you're born blind, there's nothing you can do about it. It's a permanent disability, right? And then there's something called as temporary disability. For instance, if you have a migraine, you have a pounding migraine, you can't think straight. You're not able to look at the screen for longer times, right? You can't function like you normally do, but that's temporary, that goes away, right? A good example would be you lost your sense of smell and taste. If anyone was infected with COVID, if you remember, that's something temporary, right? And situational, for instance, you get out in the sun, it's too sunny, you can't see, that's situational, right? So that's mostly the different kinds of disabilities it talks about and how to kind of deal with it. And it's actually by one of the board members on W3 Consortium. Her name is Leon Watson, if I can remember correctly, Leon Watson. And she also served on the UK government's accessibility guidelines also. So you should definitely check her talks out. And again, how to approach. First rule of ARIA, or ARIA rather, is don't use ARIA, right? Keep it simple. What I'm trying to say with that is, if you use a button for a button, you wouldn't have to use ARIA labels and all that stuff. You can just go ahead and use, but if you use a span tag for some reason, or a div, or let's say you have some legacy code, you can't change it for some XYZ reason, then you go ahead and use ARIA, right? Or you're building a really custom component or widget, which does happen a lot of times, go ahead and use ARIA, right? And yeah, make the content accessible, not the UX, right? We a lot of times we think about making the UX more accessible, but that's not the point. The experience needs to be around, the content, because the screen readers and the other accessibility tools will take care of the UX if you've built it correctly. And yeah, embrace web standards. We have A11Y, we have ARIA, and right, we should definitely kind of check them out. And accessibility is part of your job, right? And if your company disagrees with it, convince them. If they say we don't have the budget, yada, 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 then just say, you know what, it's for ICO, trust me, they'll do it. Just say that I'm adding ARIA tags, I'm doing all this stuff because it's good for SEO. We are lying, but that's okay, right? I'm just giving you, my engineering manager's probably thinking somewhere over there, has he pulled this kinds of stuff on us? Right? I have not, maybe, right? So what I'm trying to say is, Game of Thrones fans, anyone? Probably, right? So, you know the scene where, Arya gets beaten when she's blind temporarily? Any of you Game of Thrones? Obviously, right? Otherwise, do check it out. So she gets beaten. She's temporarily blind for some reason, right? And she gets beaten. She's getting trained to fight blind, yeah. And she's like, again and again and again. And then finally, she does it. She gets a hold of the good training and she's able to fight back blind. This is the way I would say we should approach, adding accessibility to your web applications. You should try, and I'm not saying go, try covering yourself with a blind. That does not work. I've tried it, but that's not the way to approach. And I'll tell you why. Because if you are a blind person, you're not scared of using a cane, right? Because you're used to it. The cane's going to work. It's a tool. The person's not scared to walk around, right? But if I give you a cane, you're not trained on it, right? These people who are visually impaired, they are trained on it. They're not, too scared to use the cane. In a similar situation, if you try to, temporarily disable yourself, right, and try to, create this and navigate it, it's not going to work. It's not the same experience because you're not trained. Unless you want to sit down for 6 hours a day and train yourself on how to kind of use the web, visually impaired, it's not going to work for you. So what's the answer? Try talking to people who are actually visually impaired and see what works for them and how they approach. That's what's inclusive design, right? That's what we need to do. We can't approach it from a sympathetic point. We have to take empathy in consideration. So code like you give a damn. Simple stuff to make web accessible, right? Navigation, screen reading using controls, element roles, and visibility status. That's mostly it, right? What I mean by that, right? Navigation, most common means of navigation to web is using the tab. Of course, if you're visually impaired, you won't be able to use the mouse because it's of no use to you. You would rather use the tab key. That's how you navigate around, right? So that's so basically anything that can be clicked upon or can be kind of accessed. So the mouse should have the ability to kind of navigate to the tab. So, screen reading, right? See, screen reading software depend on ARIA labels, right? They create a relationship. For instance, there's a form that you're filling up and you need to know what this input element is tagged to. You have the for tag, right? That's how the screen reader knows. So just like how you have a DOM tree, there's an accessibility tree that gets generated. And the API, the underlying API, which is the web APIs and the OS APIs, which uses technology, depend on this. So use your ARIA labels wisely. And yeah, using controls, you have your tab key to kind of navigate, and you have your arrows to kind of give direction to them, right? Element roles, they identify importance, right? For instance, you have a tab role, you have a dialog role. The screen reader knows how to approach, how to inform the user that what's in front of him, right? And assistively help him navigate through. So roles are important. For instance, let's say you have all the accessibility stuff built in, and somebody decides to add a modal window, which is not accessibility approved in some way. It's still useless because the person has no idea how to get rid of the modal window unless there's some sort of a role or something over there. He'll have to keep clicking on the tab. Or if you don't have the focus on for some reason, he'll just be stuck on that page. So not all elements might be visible all the time, right? So for instance, you have filters, you have loads of stuff that are selective. So even they need to be in consideration, because if it's not visible to the DOM, it's not visible to the screen reader. Dynamic updates. I think this was quite interesting read when I was trying to dig deeper into how to use ARIA, right? The live regions. I'll give you a simple example. If you look at this simple HTML code, think about it. It's like a cart. Let's say there's a cart and you have a bunch of items. You add a particular item, but when you're adding, the button is somewhere on the top and the cart is somewhere else. But if you've used a screen reader, you know that's a very linear thing, right? It can only do one thing at a time. So if it's able to focus only on one thing at a time, and the person who's visually impaired, how would he know how much, how many tequilas he's buying, right? He would end up buying like 10, 15 tequilas. Not a bad thing, but still, it's not a good accessibility feature. So there's this nice way of adding ARIA live, which means even though it's not focused, it's something that will announce the state changed, right? And I think this is super important because there's so many state changes that happen on the web application, right? Your Redux stores constantly bombarding your front end with different diffing and stuff. So you need to, and here's the thing, right? You need to add these attributes on the JavaScript. ARIA is not something that you just add as attributes and leave, but the behavior has to be taken care by you as well. For instance, if you're building it in React.js, you can't just expect to add these static properties and just leave it there. You need to kind of be smart about it and change the behavior as per the requirement, right? And it's case by case basis again. Some references, the software I was talking about, I'll dig deeper in that. But Radix UI, I found this was, and I looked around, quite a bit. I was looking for an easy way to kind of use accessibility approved, proper, you know, design system that was ready for me to use. Honestly, I loved Radix UI. Some of the companies that are using Radix UI are Vercel and Linear.app. It's a very good software. So all these guys are using it. And I also found a very clever way to approach, the software that you're building. And it's not only for the visually impaired, it can be a real uh, lifesaver for even us, actually. I don't know how many of you have heard, Command K, library Command K, but I'll show you what it does. It's really cool stuff. And charts, right? We have a lot of charts. People do like to, take visual data as charts. It's a very convenient way. And ARIA implementation actually has APIs in place to SVGs as well, right? And if you're building charts in D3, same as what you would do with the DOM element, you will have to add these ARIA elements to D3 charts or whatever you're building, and it would still, be accessible to the screen reader. Even though it's a chart, it doesn't really care. And yeah, inclusive design principles. I'm going to get deep on that. I'm going to explain it to you by showing the websites in a bit. And ShadCN, this is a budding, project built on Radix UI and Tailwind JS. I think it's really cool. You should check it out. They have a Next.js version as well. And yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about these softwares, right? Let me see if I can just stop my screen share without killing it. New screen share. Sound that was. All right, so inclusive design principles. This is a cool website. You should definitely check it out. It's started by a company, Telly something. I'll put it in the doc. But if you look at the site, it's very simple, and it talks about the design principles required for accessibility, good accessibility, right, with empathy. And if you look at this little balloon, and this, how would you kind of explain this to a blind person who's unable to see this? And interestingly, when I inspected, there was a nice alt tag over there, 3 hot air balloons hang together in a calm sunny sky, right? And that's something really beautiful. Like these little things really matter. I mean, you don't know who's using a product, and and what kind of disability they have, but you need to consider these things when you're coding, right? And these little things do kind of matter, right? So I thought that was really cool that they put that in there. Oh yeah, the company is Tetralogical that has come up with this inclusive design principles. It's not just, it's for all kinds of digital products. You should definitely check it out. Radix UI, this is what I was talking about, right? This is a really cool library that helps you write accessible, components. And some of the big companies have put the case studies, and it's really, really good stuff. You should definitely check Radix UI out. Vercel, no need of explanation. Next.js. Yeah. This is what I was talking about. So what I thought was, it's really cool if I can just do Command Q. Wait. And I have access to all these different actions I can do, right? Adding keyboard shortcuts is a really great way to improve accessibility. And not just for the visually impaired, also for us, right? It's how convenient. Some applications do have it. I think Jira has it. Linear definitely does. Vercel has it too. And I think this is a great accessibility feature that serves all kinds of audiences. You should definitely check out Command K. And also it's by the person who, he works at Linear. So finally, this budding software toolkit, which is I think it's like a framework of some sort. It's built using Radix UI and Tailwind CSS, and they clearly explain that you can build really appealing and pixel perfect, all that really fast UI, good paint and all that stuff, and still have accessibility in place, right? You don't have to compromise on anything that you want to do, but you can really build the accessibility feature in for people who are unable to see, like, right? And it's no harm done, right? Just having more inclusive audience. So that's mostly what I wanted to cover, and right, a couple of more talking points, but I'd like to take some questions, see what are your views on accessibility, because personally it was a very boring topic for me before I approached it from an empathetic point of view after my personal experience. Any questions or any thoughts on this topic? Anyone? Yes, please. Would you like a mic, sir?
How will the user know about these shortcuts that we include?
So all you got to do is, Command K, and it just opens up. The user just, you can map it to anything you want. It's called Command K, but you could really map it to anything. And one click of, one shortcut, and if you're able to access all these actions, I think that's a great way to kind of add, help someone who's visually impaired, because
so this Command K is like a standard for knowing about all these shortcuts.
Not, I mean, all these shortcuts, you can custom code, you can make it do whatever you want. Like instead of navigating like 3 different, pages or something, you can literally open it up and like, if you've used Mac, you know that command space, the spotlight, it's something like that, but you can add it to your web, and you know how addictive that shortcut is on Mac. Like if it's not working, your day is not working for you. So I think that's a really cool feature to all kinds of audiences.
Thank you.
Any other questions? You can pass the mic around. Like to take questions, thoughts, anything of that sort.
Okay, so when you say accessibility, how it is different from UX?
Good question, actually. User experience need not only be visual, right? It's an experience. Like you're at a, let's say you're in a plane, right? The way the seat feels, the leg space, all that is user experience, right? And let's say you're in a spa, right? That's a user experience. Like you have your eyes closed there, but it's still an experience for you, and they create that experience, right? Similarly, in the digital, coming back to what we're talking about here, the experience is not visual, right? It's audio mostly, right? And I'm talking mostly about visual accessibility softwares, is because everything out there except screen readers are not really usable, to be honest, at least to my knowledge, right? So yeah, that's actually a part of your UX, but as companies, we mostly don't involve this kind of stuff, right? Because we don't approach accessibility from empathy, like I said, but rather than a compliance, right? So that's creating a user experience for someone who cannot see, making it convenient. Any other questions? It'll take a minute for the mic to get there, but yes. Yes.
Just let's take an example of okay, thanks. Intercom, right?
Right.
So intercom is there on your landing page, even though like for say I'm like there is a person who is visually impaired.
Right.
So if I turn on the screen reader, does that have an impact on the whole landing page, or how does that work? And I mean, how can we make it work?
You thought about that? Yeah. So what he's saying is, let's say you have intercom, which is a chatbot to help your users, right? These are bots. I think it's case to case basis. Intercom is a widget that's, you have an SDK and it gets integrated. Now you would have to see if there's how it behaves. Honestly, I haven't tried that, right? But I believe it wouldn't be easier because you have a chatbot, you have to type in, and then you have So you need to follow your ARIA labels over there as well, right? And all this stuff. But honestly, I'm not sure. And again, it depends case to case. If the question is it possible to make it more convenient while having bots? Yes, definitely yes. But you'll have to use something which is ARIA compliant, right?
So just like what idea I would have is, like if my user lands up there,
right,
and maybe I'll just instead of that pop message,
right,
I'll just that there would be audio, and for say a visually impaired person
yes,
is looking at it, so there would be audio always enabled, right?
And exactly, I think that's a great way to approach it. Having
So-
audio, yeah, I think instead of having text and screen reader read it out, if you want to have audio for the same, some way of intercom or any other application can read it out without the screen reader's intervention. I think that's a great way to kind of approach it. I've never thought about that, but yes, that would be an amazing thing to do, because chatbots are quite common, like you said. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know if ChatGPT has that.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. That's all. What was it? Like I said, right? You can approach it from a point of empathy. You'll have to convince your company, and if they're not, I mean, well, at least you tried, right? And you can sleep peacefully at the night, thinking that I tried, it did not work. There's only so much I could do. But yeah, there's always another company. I can always try again. I'm joking. Joking. Any other questions, guys? Anything at all? Thoughts also? Because I feel, we don't criticize stuff enough. And if you look at these old school computer clubs, they came together to debate about issues, right? To make things easier, better, talk about issues like I said, Jira, right? Or any other software that you use on a daily basis. If it's really painfully slow or anything of that sort, how do we make it better? I think, yeah, please go ahead.
No.
Yeah, now I can hear.
It's more like, say we have implemented accessibility in our app. How
Right.
do you measure impact that you have created? Like, is there a way you will get to know, like, these many people have used screen readers, or, basically measuring your impact, say?
I think, okay, you want to measure the impact it has. I think it's a good thing to know that it's impacted someone, but it shouldn't really kind of, change the way you're approaching. Like, let's say you have only 2% of your users and you're like, this is not worth it. Don't do that. Like, 2%, 1% or 0 point some percent, it still matters. But coming to the question, can you track it? I think, yeah. I mean, you first of all, if first of all, you need to validate that it's going to help. The visually impaired, any differently able person. And the way to do that, like I was saying, you don't blindfold yourself and try accessing your software. I think that's not going to work. You actually create more jobs or hire people, or or if your company is not ready for that, actually ask. A lot of blind schools, and for the visually impaired, you can go talk to them, understand, take feedback, and see what you could do. And if you really want to track the impact, I think there's so many pixel code tools and stuff which can track you, right? I think heap analytics and all that stuff definitely will give you numbers, but those numbers shouldn't really change the way we approach it, or what we do actually with it. Any other questions, guys?
Makes sense. Thanks.
You can take my mic, actually.
It's not really a question actually, but I would like to share a few of the things that we are doing. So right now I'm working at the browser company where we are building a new browser. And then one of the things that we actually use accessibility there is to do the UI testing of the website. So basically like how the UI, because typically when you use the DOM, basically, you would use the query selectors and you use the selectors, right? But then those selectors keep on changing when you change the website, or like if the website is deployed again. So now what we do here is on the dev tools panel, if for everybody else, so there is an accessibility tree. Instead of DOM tree, you can literally see your accessibility tree of your page. So we are actually using that, and I'm really glad that you actually brought this topic of accessibility, because I think accessibility first is the thing that we really need to kind of inculcate in our development culture. So really thanks, and I'm really glad that you brought this up. So just wanted to share this. Thank you.
And there we go. Like, and we have one person already who's connecting on that topic. And I think it's a great way, like building a browser. That's amazing, first of all, and building it accessibly first. I think that's a great, what's the name of the product again? Arc. Okay, check it out. Definitely worth checking that out. And yeah, I think that's a great way to kind of give back to the community, right? It takes a bit of effort, but it really goes a long way to help somebody whose life can change, right? Like I said, it can create jobs. If you have POS systems in your company that you develop, integrate it. Like you have browsers, integrate that. I think it really makes a difference. And you never know whose lives you'll touch. So yeah. Any other questions, guys? Yes.
Maybe it's not a question. Like say, basically, my thought process is like instead of making all these web apps, Android apps, and all these things
Right.
accessible, why can't we just create some Alexa skills which can just make their life much more easier in a trivial way? Like
True. I mean, yeah. I mean, Alexa. I don't know if I like Alexa or Google doing all the bidding, but I mean, yeah. I mean, if you're a company, definitely build an Alexa skill. Or a Google, I don't know what they call it, Google skills maybe, right? But at the same time, not everything I feel can be connected to an extent, or let me give it a thought. You wouldn't want Alexa, which is Amazon, to know that your data, what you're doing with that data, right? It's still going through Alexa. So I don't think companies would want to do that, that everything that you relay to your customer is going through someone else's company's infra. I think that would be an arguable point. But yes, you can build skills which is not, which is easier to kind of do, like, you know, but not everything I feel can be done, because it's more easier for you to just grab your phone, go on, and then still the phone experience is not that great either. I did give a try on the phone, turning on the accessibility feature. It's great for apps, but not for the web. We all know that you know, browsing on the web on your phone is not a really great experience. There's a reason why we have an app. There's all that progressive web application stuff, but you know, it's not really that par with an app, or not all the SDKs are included. So I think, yeah, so we would definitely need having accessibility for web, because it's the easiest way to kind of build stuff, right? So, yeah. Any other questions, guys? Any thoughts? Yeah. Right. 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 That's a great question. And I was back in the day contributing a bit on a software called Orca, which is a screen reader for Ubuntu, right, as default screen reader for Linux systems, actually. And to answer that question, it is a platform issue. We can make it better. Like I said in the start, it sounds so robotic, it's annoying, right? We have all these tools, like Siri speaks so much better. Like I said, if it sounds like Palki Sharma, that's such a good user experience. Like it's annoying to hear that robotic noise over and over again. It can be better on the platform side. Unfortunately, for some reason, big companies don't feel it's worth the time or effort, or at least that's my assumption. Because if they could do that with Siri, why not do it with their screen readers, right? And how hard could it be to kind of integrate something like that? It's definitely a platform issue, but at the same time, we can't change a lot of things, but we can definitely acknowledge that there's a problem. But at this point, what we could do is build the web better, because we have that immediate power to do so. So I feel, yeah, but there's definitely a problem with the platform as well. I completely agree with you. Any other questions, guys? We'll take one last question. Thoughts, questions, anything? I think I've put some seeds to sow. I think we'll see how it comes along. Thank you, guys. It was amazing. Thank you for coming.